This video is a compilation of stories from Reddit about creepy encounters on the road. A good friend of mine told me this story years ago. He is the stereotypical old big bad trucker. I've seen some weird stuff with him while driving in South Texas along the border. He never batted an eye, but while telling me this story he had goosebumps and a concerned expression. Which from this guy is about the equivalent of a trembling lip and shit-stained pants. I'll tell this story in the first person as he told it to me. Years ago in the late 90s I was on my way from the house, Central Texas, heading to Laredo to pick up a load. It was early morning, around 4 or 5. I had just come off a string of days at home, so I know I wasn't tired. I'm on one of those 2-lane winding roads in the absolute middle of nowhere when I see something on the side of the road at the edge of my high beams. At first I just thought it was roadkill, as is usually the case. As I get closer, I see that it is roadkill, and there's someone crouching over the deer carcass. I remember thinking either this guy's taking the antlers as a trophy, or he's sick. As I got closer still I can now see that this guy's eating the deer. He's pulling chunks of meat from the stomach and bringing them up to his face. At this point he stops mid-motion and looks up at me. Not at my truck, but at me. It stands up and that's when I see that it's huge, brown, and covered in hair. I remember thinking at this point, oh damn, this thing is standing on the tiny shoulder looking at me. By this point, maybe 3 seconds have passed, and I'm about to the point in the road he's standing at. I didn't even think of stopping. In fact I'm starting to lay on it and get the hell out of there. As I'm passing it, it's looking at me. Again not at the truck. It's looking through the driver's side windshield at me. He obviously has the intelligence to know that there's a driver in here and knows where I'm sitting. As I start to pass him, I can still see its head above the hood of an old needle nose Pete. Old truck design, where the hood goes straight out from the windshield, known for being tall and difficult to see around. This thing is giant. I remember seeing what looked like human intelligence in its eyes. It scares the life out of me. My dad has several stories from hauling logs in Idaho and driving trucks through Utah and Nevada. My favorite is from actually just in his pickup going through Utah. He said there was a light keeping pace with him out in the desert on a moonless night. It kept pace for a minute before it disappeared, and his truck turned off. He stopped and turned it on, and pulled off at the next diner. The folks in the diner called it a common occurrence. The creepiest is when he was hauling logs in Idaho and was coming down from near Coeur d'Alene area during a snowy winter night. He was putting on chains before heading down steep grade and said all of the hair stood up on his body. It felt like there was something watching him. Halfway down the switchbacks he saw a large figure standing on a 20-foot tall embankment. As he got closer it jumped down, and the shoulders were as tall as the cab. In a single bound it leaped down, and then leaped over to the other side of the embankment. At the time he thought it was a Sasquatch. Now he says it was probably a demon trying to make him crash. He didn't stop to remove the chains until he was well away from the mountain. If you enjoy this video, consider giving it a like and subscribing. Whoa, that actually reminds me of a story. I live in Spokane, which is about 45 minutes away from Coeur d'Alene. I was driving back from my aunt's in the dark one night and just hit a massive wall of fog. I turned the corner and a whole herd of deer come running down the road toward me. I slow down a lot so I don't hit them. Then after another few seconds I see a woman standing in the street facing away from me with dirty clothes. The area I was in is known to have meth heads and heroin addicts, so I cracked the window and called out to her and asked if she needed me to call anyone. As soon as I spoke her head whipped around and it looked like she was a burn victim. Huge lidless eyes, no eyebrows, Voldemort nose, and a mouth that looked like it was melted or sewn up or something. Then she ran off into the woods and I drove a lot faster than I should have home. Alright, that second story is really weird. I went to a boarding school that was in the woods in Idaho, in Bonus Ferry, which was like an hour or more from Coeur d'Alene. In one of the dorms, there was this 8-foot shadowy figure that would just stare at you sleeping from across the room. The ceilings weren't that high, and they're a hunch to it, like the giant in Big Fish. I was there for 2 years. I saw it about a year in, but new kids on their first night saw it. Everyone knew. And if you got transferred to that dorm then you were warned. In a joking way, we were kids. It's been 15 or so years, and I still just got goosebumps writing that out. Of course, story going around that it was just a really tall staff member named Jeff that committed suicide, and he was just making sure you were asleep, so that was its name, Jeff. There's something messed up out there. I would tell more stories, but it's like telling someone you saw a UFO. You might believe them somewhat, but there's always that sure you did to it. This is a really crazy coincidence though on my end hearing something like that. Let's hear them. Alright. My first month in I was in a different dorm. Top bunk, in the middle of the room. I was taking a nap, with my arm hanging off the side. I don't remember what I was dreaming about, but this I remember clear as day. Just a cat hissing and then screaming, and someone bit my finger, hard. Hard enough to bruise under my nail. I was totally alone in the dorm, and I was sleeping on my stomach, arm dangling so it wasn't me doing it in my sleep. The dorms were separated by one half wall, and I got up, checked it out thinking someone ran over there, and was just screwing with me, and then there was a bang on the wall from by my bunk. Again, totally alone. I can't speak for this, because it was in the girls' dorm, but they had a little girl that would run through the bathroom screaming and leaving behind wet footprints. Their dorm was by our little pond, and when we were out there some girls came out screaming and towels saying it happened. A female staff went and checked it out, and I remember when she came out she had that expression that's kind of like a half smile that said I don't know and I can't explain it, and she was like, yeah, there's a child's footprints in there. Have two freaky things that have happened. First, middle of the night with a buddy and we pulled off to the side of the highway to take a piss and switch drivers. Nobody else around on the road. I walk to the side, pitch black, whip it out, and start to pee. My buddy is just stretching his back, or whatever. I heard something in the woods shake a tree. No other way to describe it. A tree about 30 feet away shook. Then I hear something big crashing through the woods coming straight for us in the car. My buddy and I don't even say anything. He dives in the driver's side and I jump through the passenger window, pants still down. He floors it out of there, legs and pants dangling outside. Never did see anything in the rearview mirror, but there was something out there coming at us. My buddy likes to say he heard me stop peeing when that tree shook. Second, I was solo somewhere in West Virginia, again middle of the night. I got off an exit, one of those long curvy ones. I saw lights before I got off and assumed it was exit stuff, or maybe even construction. Get to the exit and it's not construction, it's a ton of Army or National Guard guys. The exit was lit up brighter than daytime, so many lights set up pointing everywhere. The army guys were completely decked out, gas masks on and assault rifles. They were sprinting around. One guy at the corner was frantically waving me through to get back on the highway. I gunned it out of there, looked in the news later, and didn't see anything. No idea what was going on that night. It's mostly UFO/supernatural stuff I've seen out on the interstate. Within the first few months of driving, if I recall correctly, was PA. My first couple years I was a night driver, so it was hard to see things sometimes. But the one in PA was me trying to follow a flatbedder who was hauling through the mountains. At one point I start to fall back because I can feel the van starting to lean. It wasn't long after that I reached down to take a swig off the handy monster I had, and I look up. And there's a guy standing off to the shoulder just outside the tree line wearing what appeared to be some type of soldier's uniform. Looked like Revolutionary War era. He had a musket as well. As I approach, I can see him staring right at me, and then he starts walking back into the tree line still looking at me. Before he manages to make it through the trees, he disappears. Like literally vanishes in thin air. I had my windows down, and the air in the area got real cold. After about a mile, the air warmed up again. I had a really sad feeling come over me for a while afterward. Needless to say, I didn't stop for the rest of my shift. I want to share a story of something I experienced a couple months ago. There's no huge backstory or anything, but it thoroughly freaked me out. I don't get scared too easily, but this is one thing that I'm still not sure what really happened, and it still creeps me out when I think about it. Last winter I was back in NJ for break from college. I go to school in New York City. During the breaks, I would usually be nocturnal with my friends. We would sleep till the afternoon, hang out after dinner, until around 3 to 4 am, go to sleep, and repeat. My town is pretty small, and not a lot happens after 10 PM. I always feel really weird driving around at night, because there are literally no cars on the road, and there aren't street lamps to illuminate the road. Huge contrast to the city. So when you're driving, it's pitch black except for your own car's headlights. So as usual, I was at a friend's house until around 3 am, and we called it a night. So we all got in our respective cars to drive home. As usual, the drive home was really dark, and there were barely any cars on the road back. Around 10 minutes into the drive, I see an intersection up ahead with the street light on green, so I kept driving along. I was probably going around 45 miles per hour, and I passed the green light when I see something on the road in the left lane. I'm still not sure what I saw exactly, and my memory could be embellishing it a bit, but I'll try to describe it to the best of my ability. I saw a pale, bony old man crawling on the ground. I didn't know what it was at first, but I saw the head tilt up, and my headlights caught the rims of his eyes, kind of like when you shine a flashlight into the forest and you see a rabbit's eyes, or whatever. I don't remember seeing his legs, but he was definitely not wearing clothes on his upper body. I remember seeing the definition of his arms. They looked like they were just skin and bones. He had wiry grey hair, kind of like Gollum from LOTR. I drove past him in the matter of seconds, so it all happened very quickly. After I passed him, I screamed what the F for about a minute to myself. The intersection was only a couple minutes away from my house, so I nervously kept driving until I got home. I sat in the driver's seat in my driveway for a good 15 minutes pondering what had just happened. I felt incredibly guilty because I wasn't sure if it was a human in danger and needed help, or if it was just a figment of my imagination. I wasn't sure if I should drive back and try to see anything, but I was really frightened by what I had seen, and I couldn't get myself to go back. I ended up going to sleep really late after watching a movie to take my mind off of it. I woke up the next morning with it still buzzing in my head. I went onto Google to see if I could find any info on any accidents that happened at that intersection last night, but I couldn't find anything. I was relieved to learn that no one was in any accidents that night, but at the same time it created a bunch of confusion because I still don't know what I saw. If you enjoy these videos, please consider subscribing.